This is the Knock&Talk Show, an Alio first responder veteran podcast, sharing some comic relief from the street.
Lake Oswego's in pursuit, military in Riverside, coming into the city. No vehicle description on a Washington plated car. It's incident 2130.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 38th episode of the Knock&Talk Show. I, of course, am your host, Patrick Faulkner, and our guest today is John Renken. John Renken is a U.S. Army veteran. I believe he's also a black belt in some martial arts, and he's a mountain climber. We're going to have some great stories here. John, brother, welcome to the Knock&Talk Show. How are you?
Doing great, man. How are you?
Man, if I was any better, they would have to tax it, and they probably would because
yes,
today,
they would.
Yeah, today's been a great. Today's Monday, and Monday didn't suck. So, yeah, I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, you know, with that $80 billion for new IRS agents, they'll for sure come for you.
Oh yeah,
for your
absolutely.
Next.
Yes, they will. Yeah, my wife is a CPA. And she owns her own firm, and she's like, this is not going to be good.
Yeah,
not going to be good.
Yeah, right.
So for all of you cops and military folks out there that have creative accountants, you're not going to be able to get away with it anymore.
Dang.
Yeah,
I've got a few of them. Time to incorporate.
It is definitely time to incorporate. That's right. Get that corporate veil up now. So, John, give us a little bit of background about who you are.
Sure.
We'll dive deeper at the end of the show as to what you've got going on and how people can find you and how you're helping people. But and in between there, we're going to chase rabbits. But I'm gonna hit my mute button and let you start talking.
Yeah. So served in the Army from 1993 to 1996. Was here at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which is where I'm still at. Was infantry guy and then did airborne school, ranger school, all that high speed stuff. Got out, went to college. While I was in college, started professionally fighting in MMA. I've got, I don't know, 6, 7 black belts, whatever it is.
I lost count at 5.
Yeah. And then I have 6 world titles from mixed martial arts. I had
Shut
70
the front
pro
door.
fights.
Wow.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No,
I thought you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had 70 pro mixed martial arts fights, 6 world titles, Hall of Fame, got the knockout of the year in the world in 2008. So was the king of leg locks from like 2005 to 2007. Had more leg lock victories than anybody. So
wow.
Yeah, I had a lot. So after college, just started pro fighting, and then that's when I came back to Fort Campbell and actually started training the military in hand-to-hand combat, and trained 5th Special Forces Group for 20 years on all of their fighting and shooting integration skills.
Wow.
So anything that had to do with fighting or the use of gun while fighting, that was all my arena. Did that all the way up till COVID, and then obviously, if you can't be within 6 feet of each other, you can't really train to fight. So they let it go for a little bit. They were super gracious, like, hey, we'll figure it out. And we got towards summer, and there still was no end in sight. And they're like, hey, brother, so, which it was okay for me. I was 47 years old, so I was starting to definitely feel it, because every year I'm getting older, and every year I'm still training 23-year-olds.
Right.
So that kind of sucked.
Maybe just a little bit.
Right. So, So I did that. That was best time of my life. So loved it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And then embracing the suck, right? That's one of the Army's motto. I guess at 47, or actually from 40 on, that suck probably
really sucks.
Really sucks. Yeah. Yeah. Cause, I'm 48 and my knees crack when I stand up. I make noises when I sit down.
Yeah,
Getting old sucks.
it really does. Yeah. Yeah. So that was, and in between there, climbed a couple of really high mountains and did some cool stuff. And,
So I see here that on my pre-show questionnaire that I send people,
yeah.
Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. Africa.
Tell me about that.
Yep. So it's kind of funny. I retired fighting in 2008 or 2009, whatever year that was. And man, I was just bored. Like I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I went to a school, CSF, which is Comprehensive Soldier Fitness. They've changed the name now, but it was all like mindset, goal setting, that kind of stuff. And we get to day one, and the instructor's like, hey, I want everybody to write out their top 5 goals. And I was like, I don't have any. I've done them. And he was like, what? And I'm like, jumped out of planes. I did this. I did this. I fought all over the world. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what else there is to do. And so he sent me home. We got done with the day of class, and he goes, you have to come back in the morning with 5 brand new goals. And when you're going to accomplish them by, I'm going to fail you out of the course. I was like,
oh.
And I'm a civilian. 5th group paid the bill for me to go. Right. So I'm in an Army class, and I'm like, there's no way in hell you're failing me. Like, so I went home to the hotel and started like coming up with stuff to do. Like I had no clue. And it was so funny because I was sitting on the bed in the hotel, was watching TV, thinking about what am I going to do, and my phone lit up, and it was when Groupon used to be real big.
Okay.
And my Groupon popped up, and it said, climb the most dangerous mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. And I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Right. Yes.
Right? So this is in January of 2011 or 2012. I don't remember what it was. I think I'd have to look, but I think it was 11. Maybe it was 12. I come back from that, and in April, I meet a guy who's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, fundraising for my niece who has cystic fibrosis.
No
3
kidding.
months later. So I did that November. So that was in January. So 11 months later, I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, 19,342 feet. Absolutely crazy, amazing, like 5 different temperate zones, nutty. And then I went back in 2016 and climbed it again.
And did it again. Wow.
Well, so first time I got sick at 17.5, I got mountain sickness. My guide said I could have gone, but I got 4 kids at home, and like I started panicking, like because I was getting messed up. I was dry heaving, couldn't stop throwing up, my head hurt, and so the second time I was smarter about how I climbed, and I made it, but the first time I didn't make it. So I went back in 2016 and climbed it again.
Wow, a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, well, I'm going back next year with my 17-year-old. So,
really?
Yeah, he wants to climb.
Wow. Well, okay then.
Yeah. Got to get my fat ass back in shape. So
it's time for some leg locks.
Yeah, right. So yeah, so
hey, you,
really,
23-year-old. Come here, Mr. 23-year-old.
No more 23-year-olds. I'm training with guys my own age. Like I don't want to hurt anymore. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was really cool. Absolutely gorgeous, man. So it's, man, I can't say enough about climbing that mountain. And I want to climb a couple of the other ones. I'm not going to do Everest or anything like that. I don't have time to take off 3 months plus whatever the prep time is.
Right.
That's a 3-month climb from start to finish.
Wow.
Yeah, most people don't know that.
That time you can be halfway through the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah. That's right.
That's still one of my goals. I don't know that I'll I'll ever check that one off the box, because that's a
Don't do
6 month.
Don't do straight through. Do it in what they call the sections.
Yeah. I've done a couple sections with my dad, my brother, as I grew up, but I still, my goal is to straight through hike. 6 months, that's a big commitment, you know. After I make my second $1 million, that's what I'll do. I got to get through my first
$1 million. I made $1 million, I'd do it. Yeah. You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll crowdfund for it. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Dude, the people I've talked to that have done it. So one of my buddies from 5th Group retired. He just got back from it.
Oh, really?
Everybody I've talked to that has done it has said it's absolutely life transforming.
Yeah. I've heard the same
Everybody.
thing. I've heard the same thing from the through hikers that I would meet along the trail. That were, we were always northbound.
Yeah.
And meeting the through hikers that started in early spring up in the north end of it coming through, man, their stories of what they saw, and this was well before digital cameras, right? So, I mean, we didn't get to see their pictures of what they took, but just the stories as they're painting the picture using their words while we're, sitting at the campfire at the shelter, drinking coffee or eating dinner or whatever. Just that's why it's on my list.
Yeah. The logistics of it alone are insane.
Yeah. And I've heard there's no prep work that you could do that's actually going to prepare you for it, right?
It's 2,300 miles through the mountains.
Yeah.
So when I did Ranger School, I did a section of the Appalachian Trail in Ranger School.
Really? What part?
And then so it was up by Dahlonega.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. And then I did another section down in Tennessee. So
okay. The Dahlonega section is Springer Mountain, right? Probably closer to Yonah Mountain.
Yeah, I did Yonah Mountain too.
Okay. I live about an hour from Yonah Mountain.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. There's a winery there called Yonah Mountain Winery that you can see the bold face of Yonah Mountain from their winery. And according to my wife, it's the best wine.
Wow.
We as a family spend lots of money on their wine.
Okay.
Just, if you're going to do a reminiscent hike, there you go.
Yeah. So, when I did Ranger School, I did Mount Yonah. You have to do a forced march up Mount Yonah. You got to do it. I forget what it is. I think you got to do it in 90 minutes.
No way.
But there's that trail on the side of Yonah Mountain, which is just a straight walk up.
Oh,
right?
It is.
Not the switchbacks.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did that. That was 1994. And when I decided I was going to do Kilimanjaro, the first mountain I did was Mount Yonah. I went back to Mount Yonah. I drove down, and I'm a freaking dumb Army guy. Packed my whole pack just like you would in the Army.
Okay.
Freaking 80-pound pack,
Right.
I buzz up that mountain. I sleep the night there, throw up a hammock. It's 40 degrees because I didn't realize that for every 1,000 feet of elevation, you lose 3 degrees. So I wasn't really prepped for that. So, I mean, it wasn't horrible because I had a decent bag, but came back down. And I was okay, but I was like, man, that was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. So I pull over to REI, I bring my backpack in, and I look at it, I was like, hey, do you hike? And he's like, yeah. I go, tell me what I'm doing wrong. There's no way these guys are doing all this stuff with this kind of pack.
That's awesome.
I would have been, what would I have been? I would have been 38 ish. So I was still in good, not great shape, but I was still in good shape. And he looked at me and he goes, what the hell do you have in that backpack? So we start going through it, and he weighed it. I had 20 pounds of metal. I had a machete, a tomahawk, my gun.
Of course.
I mean, I had everything, I had an e-tool. I mean, dude, he starts pulling this stuff out and he's like, what is wrong with you? I had a full trauma medical kit.
Of course you did. That's right. That's right.
And he's like, are you preparing for like a gunfight, or what is this med kit for? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I just packed a med kit. I looked at, what if somebody breaks a leg? What if somebody does this?
Yeah.
And he just starts chucking stuff.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I can picture that in my head. Although, in all fairness, every year there's at least one person that slides off the face of the mountain because they get too close.
Oh yeah.
You know, you were smart to have something, maybe not a full trauma kit, but you know, at least a tourniquet.
Dude, I had blood clot, you know, the clot stuff in. I mean, I don't even know what I was thinking. Like, you know, because you don't really mountain climb or hike in the Army. It's all forced movement to objective, right?
Right.
So, like, I didn't know how to pack for that. And man, so, you know, now conversely, I go and do Kilimanjaro, and I show up with their packing list, which was super light compared to what I was doing. I was like, I could do this. And so day one starts, I've got my whole pack of all of their packing list on my back. And my African guide comes up and he's like, Mr. John, can I take your stuff? And I'm like, no, you're not. Why would you take my stuff? Like, you're not carrying my pack. I'll carry my own shit. So we get to 9,000 feet. I was like, hey, come here. I was like, if I don't absolutely need it, fucking sell it. Like, get rid of this stuff, man. Like, I was dying, you know.
That's awesome.
I was like, I don't care. Give it to charity. You keep it. Get rid of it. All of it. So that was the first time. Second time, my backpack literally weighed like 5 pounds. I mean, I carried my food, my water, my raincoat in case it started raining, and then I carried a whoopee. You know, that was it. I was like, I don't need nothing else. These guys are carrying it. You know, it was great.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yep.
All right.
Those are some of my funny mountain stories.
Those are some great mountain stories.
Yeah.
Those are some great mountain stories.
I don't want a Pikes Peak too. So.
Oh, really? Because I've hiked Pikes Peak. Tell me about that one.
Yeah. So I flew down to Denver. Again, I was prepping for Kilimanjaro, and so I went and did Pikes Peak, and I show up in the morning, no clue really, and I'm eating this huge breakfast, and everybody else is like leaving, and I'm just eating, like I didn't think nothing of it, and it took me so long to get up there, I couldn't make it back down safely because of the, you know, so we're sitting there and we're at Devil's Crag. And it starts to lightning pretty bad. And the guy that was with me was like, hey, bro, I think we got to turn around. I was like, turn around? It's like, right there's the freaking top. It's like, let's just go hide under a rock. So it's July. No. Beginning of August.
Okay.
And it's freaking snowing up there. And I don't have anything for snow. Because it's the middle of August and it was like 80 degrees at the, you know, at the base, or 90 degrees or whatever it was. And so it starts snowing, and now I'm going, and he's telling me, because he's a 10th group guy. He's one of my buddies that was in 10th group. He's like, hey, you know, this is how people really die. It's called, you know, summit fever. He's like, it's starting to lightning and snow. I was like, all right, well, like if we have to turn around, we'll turn around. I was like, well, why don't we just wait and see what happens, you know? And so the lightning subsided and we got to the top, but it freaking took us so long because I was screwing around. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. We couldn't make it back down because it had been dark before we got back to Devil's Crag.
Okay.
Which then is when all the rock and all that stuff. So we ended up taking a ride down the mountain with this guy. His freaking brakes are literally burning. Like, we were just like, oh my God. So we decided to take a ride down to be
We're still going to die.
I think this guy is going to kill us. So, you know.
Oh God.
It was pretty nuts, man. But I didn't have any altitude issues. So I really felt after that climb that I was prepared for Kilimanjaro. And I wasn't. So the guys that I went with were all already like living at altitude, They all live in Colorado, and man, they just smoked my ass. And we did 4 days up, 1 day down. So we did the short route, and I just couldn't hang with that. So the second time I went 5 days up, 1 day down.
So is that 1 day down? Is that a lot of fast roping, or is it just the other side of the mountain?
Because you're not like traveling this way; it's down. So like it's way faster, way faster.
Down always hurt my knees in a different way.
Oh yeah, it still will do that because so it's like 46 miles, 40, depending on which route you take, it's between 40 and 60 miles up and back. So when you're coming back in 1 day. So you're doing 20 miles coming down.
Yeah, you're hauling.
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
You start 6 a.m. because you start that night at 11-ish, depending on what route you took again. I think we started at 9 or 10, summited at 6 a.m., and then you're feeting it all the way back down, and you do that in 8 hours.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I've done parts of the AT in Virginia and Pennsylvania where it's nothing but rock like this, with the switchback that looks like this, and then it's back up again. I don't know, man. Bless your heart. Thank you for doing that.
I've got a picture. I don't know. I have it on my. I'll email it to you. I've got a picture of where I do this. This rock face on Kilimanjaro, dude. Absolutely insane. Let me see if I can find it here. I've got it on my Facebook, dude. Like I'm telling you, man. And it was literally straight up.
Wow.
Straight up. I couldn't even believe it. I looked at it. I was like, "We're not climbing that, are we?" They're like, "Yes, it's to the next campsite." I was like, "Oh my God, man."
Yeah. Where's the elevator?
Yeah. When you just start seeing that stuff and, you're doing between 3,000 and 5,000 feet of elevation gain every day.
No.
So
I don't know that I would do that, but So one time, the last time that my dad and my brother and I went on a hike on the AT, we were in part of North Carolina. We were right outside of the national park, Smoky National Park. So right there, almost to Tennessee area. And my dad loves to plan the trip, right? So my brother and I, we let my dad plan the trip, just tell us what we need to pack, what kind of weather we looking at. Do we need rain gear? Do we not need rain gear? And this was in the fall. So probably mid-October-ish. And my dad said, "Hey, listen, the high is going to be in 60. The low is going to be somewhere around 40. So, pack your mid temperature gear." Okay. So I took the lighter sleeping bag, right? Because I didn't have the cold weather comfort, and shorts, and a polyester shirt because cotton kills when you're hiking. So I was dressed, to sweat and be hot because it was going to be near 60. And then, anyway, we go to sleep that night. The shelter was a wooden shelter with an open face, and it only had 2 sides. Didn't have the 3 sides, only had 2 sides. And the wind started kicking up after we were cleaning up for dinner.
Which it does. It does in the Appalachian.
And thankfully, somebody left a tent. From one of the previous hikers left a tent. And we were able to fashion a 3rd and 4th side to the shelter for windbreak. And when we woke up that morning, there was 3 inches of snow. It was about 20 degrees outside.
Yep.
And we were not prepared for that at all.
3 degrees per 1,000 feet of elevation.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah. So I think my dad was looking at the city, right? We were outside of Henderson, North Carolina, I think. Is
Oh,
where we were.
yeah. You were right there at exit 461.
Okay. I don't remember. I want to say it was the Hendersonville hike that was that we did, and we ended up having to when we decided not to hike back down. We decided to hike north because it was closer to the road. And when we got there, we had enough cell service for a yeah, for one of those, not tour guides, but a transfer service to pick us up there and bring us back down to where the car was.
When I did the Fontana Dam, that's how I had to do it because I was doing it solo. So I dropped my car and then paid $100 for a transfer to Fontana Dam.
We did Fontana Dam at one point, I want to say. Yeah, we've done a good number.
I didn't get very far because there were bears literally in the freaking trees.
Yeah.
Like when I decided to go, it was like people were telling me, you might not want to go. There's so many bears out right now. I was like, I'm doing it. It's only 25 miles or whatever it was. It's like, I'm doing it. Man, my first night and seeing the bear, I was like, nope, I think I'm
no.
I think I slept that night, turned around, and came back home. I was like,
yeah, we kept a bear whistle on all of our packs, but I would have been like you. Yeah, I don't know that a whistle is going to prevent a bear from coming to taste how I taste. You know,
well, I have my gun. I still travel with my gun, but
yeah,
the gun doesn't do you any good when you're sleeping, and that's when they're going to get you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
I sent you the picture of that cliff, and I sent it on your Facebook.
Okay. I'll cut
see it. It's a straight up and down cliff. We had to climb that the next day.
Let me see. I don't know. Wow.
Yep.
Wow. All right. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to mark this 39 minutes and 40 seconds, and I'll try to splice this in so that so the viewers can see this. You audio people, you'll have to go to YouTube, where all the cool stuff is. Anyway, yeah, that's a crazy story. Climbing that is a bold rock face.
Yeah, that was probably the toughest day, I thought.
I
mean, some of it was pretty difficult, but that really challenged me mentally.
Imagine.
It was just straight up. I want to say it was like 2,000 feet.
Now, were you having to find like handholds?
No. There's a path. Kilimanjaro, There's no technical climbing.
Okay.
On most of the routes. I think the majority of the routes. There's no technical climb. But that path is like, that big, and you're just traversing that thing.
Yeah. No.
I mean, there was one point, I've got it on video somewhere. There's one point that I'm literally walking, looking at the rock face. The incline was so steep.
Wow.
I mean, it was just.
Wow. Maybe one day. You know what? I'll wait and see what your 17-year-old son says.
Yeah.
Before this 48-year-old tries something like that.
Well, let me tell you, I got smoked by a Japanese lady that was in her 70s.
I believe that. Hands down, I believe that.
Me, man. Went running by me, and I was just looking at her going, what the hell? And I looked at my guide, and he looked at me, and he goes, Pulley, John. Slow. Don't worry about it.
Slow.
And I'm like, yeah, but that kind of hurts my ego. And he's like,
just a little bit.
He's like, just walk slow.
I can picture that. Meet, excusey.
Yeah, like you'll see. There was another guy there. This was the craziest thing I ever seen. We were at not base camp. We were at the camp before you summit. So whatever they called that.
Okay.
And there's a guy there, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, you're in like a pair of jeans. He goes, yeah, I decided to do this like literally the day before we left. And I'm like, have you ever done anything before? And he goes, no. He was in a pair of tennis shoes, bro. Like he climbed that mountain in a pair of tennis shoes.
Wow. That's
No prep,
determination.
no training.
Wow.
I don't remember if he made it or not. But that was like, I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then it was so funny because I was talking with him and I thought I was eating. So the higher you get, you lose your appetite and your stomach does weird things. Like you have to be careful with your protein consumption. There's all these things that take place, right?
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and talking with him and I thought I was eating. I mean, I felt like I was eating. I felt full. And my guide, who I still keep in contact with, great guy, goes, Mr. John, you have to eat. It's a long night. It's like, what are you talking about? I've been eating. I looked down and I had taken like literally 2 bites of food and felt full.
Wow.
Because the elevation messes with your digestive tract. So,
wow.
Yeah, they talk about it on the big ones like Everest and stuff like that. You got to be really careful.
Yeah, who would have thought so much would go into something like that? You know, I mean that's a lot of prep.
It's a ton of prep.
Yeah,
it's a ton of prep.
Well, sticking with the funny stories, I feel like there's something in this next question. Honorary colonel.
Oh yeah, so nothing really funny about that. So the Kentucky Colonel, like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
There's an organization which, service to the community. You can be nominated to become an honorary Kentucky Colonel, which is actually from just before the Civil War.
Okay.
And so because of my 20 years of service to 5th Group as a civilian, I got nominated for that award. Super difficult to get. There's only a couple of thousand people in the world who have gotten it. So
wow.
It's one of my proudest accomplishments.
So answer me this if you can. Colonel E.H. Taylor, one of my favorite bourbons. Was he a real colonel or was he an honorary colonel? Inquiring minds want to know.
I can look. I've got a database. What was his name?
Colonel E.H. Taylor. And for you folks out there trying to chase down the Blanton's bottle, not worth it. It's not worth the money you have to spend to get Blanton's. Go get a Colonel Taylor instead. You'll think.
Yeah, so he's actually a Kentucky colonel. He's not a colonel.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have something in common with a great bourbon mine.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
Huh. Yeah, so and they've got a whole business section to that, like where you can network with other Kentucky colonels. Like it's a high, almost fraternity type of organization.
That's pretty nifty.
Yeah. So
wow.
It's pretty impressive, man.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm impressed there, Colonel.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact,
no funny story with that one.
No funny. Well, I mean, we can make it a funny story, right? So
like Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders is a Kentucky colonel. So that's kind of where some of that stuff comes from.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to see business cards with Colonel John on there.
I don't know. I mean, maybe people do that. I don't know.
I would think. I mean, if I was a Kentucky colonel, I would milk that for as much as it's worth. I mean, it's a phenomenal nomination, right? It's a big deal.
It's one of the highest awards in the country.
Yeah, it's got history behind it. I would milk that. Would be on every Facebook post, every website. It would be everywhere. Colonel C.P. Faulkner. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
By golly. I appreciate your nominations, by the way.
It's the highest award you can get in Kentucky, and it's one of the highest awards you can get in the U.S. as a civilian.
As a civilian. Well, see. All right, folks. Thanks. I will be starting my campaign for a nomination.
There you go.
Patrick for Colonel 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
For my contribution to the comic world.
Whoever nominates you is really the person that's going to be responsible for if you get nominated, like if you win the nomination, because they only give out so many per year, and they've got to know you well enough to give your entire story of why you deserve that award. And then it gets signed by the governor of the state. I mean, it is a high end, like difficult to get.
I imagine. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, congratulations, Colonel.
Yeah, it was you know, it was pretty meaningful to me.
Yeah, as it should be. Well, going back to your knife hand days, right?
Yeah.
There has to be, I mean, absolutely has to be some funny stuff with some 23-year-olds getting locked up. Anything, any one story stand out?
Oh, I've got so many stories from MMA and my time doing all that stuff. And so one of my favorite ones is it was my fourth professional fight, my first title. So I fought in a cold house for my first fight. It was an abandoned house in Wisconsin, 20 below zero. You can look it up online. They're called the cold house fights.
Wow.
We literally all stood around in jackets and, beanies, freezing our balls off. And then when it was your time to fight, you would have to just take off your jacket and like hope that your fight went fast. Mine went 10 and a half minutes.
Oh, gosh. That's a long fight.
Dude, and it was freaking freezing, man. Oh. So I cut my eye open. This was back in the day when nut shots and headbutts were legal. So I headbutted the guy and he moved and I cut my eye open. It was so cold that it froze the blood on and it stopped bleeding.
Wow.
So so we're all in there. Dave Monet's in there, who became a UFC champion. I'm in there. Henry Matamoros, who I fought 3 times, was in there. Some real freaking high-end quality guys. We all got our start in this abandoned house in the middle of Wisconsin at 20 below zero.
That's a cool story.
Yeah. And then I fought just like 2 weeks later at this show, and I fought a 350-pound cop from Detroit, Frank Amalfitano, and then Mark Nelson, who was a 280-pound guy, because there's no weight classes when I started fighting. And then I did well enough in that tournament, they invited me back to fight for the belt. And so my trainer at the time was like, hey, you don't eat before you fight. He had been in athletics his whole life. He's like, you can just have peanut butter. I sat over there eating the peanut butter because I was starving. And so that fight went like 23, 24 minutes. At about 15 minutes, I threw up in my mouth. So I threw up and I kept it in because I didn't want to puke on him. And somebody goes, are you okay? And I pull out my mouthpiece. It's just a little peanut butter puke. Put my mouthpiece back in. Go back to fighting.
Just a little peanut butter puke. That's all, folks.
So, and they always laugh about it because all the MMA guys, I was just crazy. Jeremy Horn's got a story that he did for a podcast or something. And they asked him, what's the craziest thing you ever seen in MMA? And he says, me. So the story is he was just coming on to he started just a little bit before I did, but he was really starting to come on strong. And we were at a fight show together, and he was the main card and I was on the undercard. And I was sitting in the locker room and I was napping. I was out. And he walks over because he's fought for a little bit longer than everybody at that point. He's like, hey man, aren't you coming up here in like 2 fights? And I'm like, yeah, 2 fights, maybe 3, something like that. He's like, well, don't you think you should warm up? And I was like, yeah, that's what the first round's for. I'll figure it out. That was my attitude. Everybody who knew me back then, I just didn't care. I just showed up to fight, and I showed up and I fought cold. Probably for my first, 30 fights.
Really?
Yeah. I never warmed up. I didn't start warming up until after I went to Thailand. So I would probably be 20, 30 fights in before I ever started to warm up.
What made that shift?
Being in Thailand, working with that caliber of people. I mean, those people I got some funny stories from Thailand too. So
I hear
appropriate stories.
Appropriate stories. I was going to say,
crazy like that.
I hear one night in Bangkok can really change a man.
So, one of the guys kneed me in the nuts.
Oh,
and not on purpose. It's just I threw a kick and he threw a kick and his knee just freaking nailed me in the nuts because they're short, you know. So I went over to the corner because I didn't have my cup on. Because, you know, we were knee sparring, so like I didn't really have it, and so I'm over there freaking holding my sack, and I'm like trying to get my breath back, and my trainer walks over and grabs my balls, and he's like, just squat. It'll be okay. Just squat. And I'm like looking around going, like, this is not normal, man.
It's not normal.
Like, the dude's just like is grabbing my nuts. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with these people? It was a great time in Thailand, though. I mean, that was the best training I ever had. I spent almost a month there training. So it was great.
Yeah. I'm glad he said just squat, not just the tip.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then they like Arab culture, right? So everywhere I went, my trainer would hold my hand. It was very uncomfortable. Like I was like, are you married, dude? Like, what's going on? Like, I didn't know because I'd never been to Thailand. So
yeah,
you know, and they were all laughing at me. They're like, what? And I'm like, why are you holding my hand? I'm a freaking grown man, dude. Like, and it was just one of those things, man. Like Thailand had some weird. And then one time, so we were in Bangkok. So I trained at Fairtech. So that's outside the city. So we're sitting there and we're in Bangkok. Like I'm grabbing street food and he's telling me, hey, don't eat this. As an American, you know, you're going to be in trouble. So don't eat that. Eat this, right? So I'm doing all that stuff and I'm like, hey, I gotta take a piss. So I start to head in this bar to go to the bathroom and he stops me screaming, panicked. I'm looking at him like, whoa, what's going on? So we have to wait for my Terp to catch up. And he catches up and I'm like, what's going on? He's like going 1,000 miles an hour. And my Terp is like, oh, it's a ladies' man bar. Oh. I was like,
okay.
What does that mean? Like ladies are there? Like I didn't get it. I didn't know what that meant. This is 2001, you know?
Oh,
you know, like, and so he doesn't speak enough English to tell me what it really means. So they're making sign language for it.
Oh.
And I finally figure it out and I'm like, oh my God. So it's basically the transvestite bar, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Or whatever they're called now. I don't know. So
that was not the latest man you were
Saturday
Night Live.
And I thought of, you know, I was like, oh my God. So I mean, and then you're in so I went in April, so it was the hottest time of the year, and they have the Sukran festival, which is their water festival. They paste you down, and like there's all these people that are like flock you as the American. And they have this flour and spray you down with water and then paste you. Like it was crazy, man.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. One night in Bangkok.
Yep. So I could tell tons of funny stories from fight days.
I bet. Yeah, we may have to come back and do a round 2.
Yeah.
Because we've got some other stories here to talk about, like some Chewbacca stories, some MacGyver stories, very dark beer.
Yes.
You do strike me as a Bach kind of person.
Yeah. So I don't know what it was, but I tried a Guinness when I was younger, after my time in the Army, and I fell in love with Ireland, and so I started drinking dark beer in college, and man, I love dark beer. Everywhere I go, that's the first thing I do is show me your local dark beer that's brewed locally, and that's what I go for. The darker, the better. Once you've had black, you never go back. So, talking about beer.
Way to put that one in there. Yeah, so there's a German smoke beer. It's called Schrenkele. Schrenkele? My wife's going to kill
I've
me.
heard of that.
It tastes like liquid smoked bacon. It's thick enough that you could chew it as you're drinking it. I mean, we went to the first time we went to Germany was in 2014, and that was to meet her German family. And before we went, she had me try this beer, and it was, I mean, I like Shiner Bock. That's my go-to beer, so I like darker beers. And she asked me to try this stuff, and it changed my taste buds forever. And when we went to Germany, we actually went to the brewery. So it's the same recipe that the German monks used. It's the same yeast strain from like the 1400s, and it is amazing.
I got to pour it from the tap in Ireland at the Guinness headquarters, and it's the same factory. It's got like 1,000-year lease. The same type of story, man. Oh my God, so good.
Yeah, when we went to Ireland, we didn't do the Guinness tour.
Did you do the bourbon, the whiskey?
No, we went to Trinity College instead.
Oh yeah, that was great too.
Yeah. To look at the Book of Kells.
Yep, the Book of Kells.
Let's see.
Oh my God, that was so amazing. Ireland's my favorite country in the world. I'd move there tomorrow.
Oh yeah. I would too. Yeah, I'm looking. I'm going to send this to you in messengers just so you can look at. I don't know if you've got a Total Wine near you, but if you can, it's the world's original smoke beer.
I'm totally going to go with that.
I'm not going to murder it again. Anyway, smoke beer, German smoke beer. If you Google that, it'll pull up. It'll have. It's so good.
I tell you what else is good, man. Like, because it's on the opposite side of the spectrum. People laugh at me. So I went to Norway and trained the Norwegian Army, and then did some MMA stuff there and trained some people there. And I met an old school Norwegian guy.
Okay.
Who still did Viking ale, Viking mead.
Mead.
Man, it was so freaking good. He sent me the recipe. I've made some here. Amazing.
Really?
Like, amazing. Yeah.
Wow. My next door neighbor actually makes mead, and he's pretty good at it.
If you can get local honey, like organic honey from your local, and you can do a pound of honey. And then you can do oranges, and you could do apples, and you could do all this fruit. Oh my God.
Yeah, he did a habanero apple. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah, and he just set up his beekeeping station. So he's going to be robbing bees now. So he's going to have his own organic local honey. Yeah,
dude. So I bought a kit at the local like wine beer homemaking store.
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna have to make another jug now, just from talking about it.
That's what we do. We plant seeds, right? We take seeds, we plant them, so they can grow.
It's amazing, man. Let me tell you, that mead was great. So if you ever get a chance to try it. Okay.
Yeah. No.
Odin's Blood is a mead that they make commercially that you can try. That's pretty close. It's pretty good.
Okay.
And it's strong. Is
it strong?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that bottle's like $30, I think, and it's the equivalent of, as far as consumption, 2 beers. But like, if you drink that bottle, that is not 2 beers. So
we're probably talking 20-30% alcohol.
I don't know what it is. I'd have to look. But I know it's stronger than 2 beers.
Yeah.
Because I can drink 2 beers and be fine, but I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink a whole bottle and try to act like I'm fine. let me see here. Odin's blood. Yeah, it's a 750. It's 20%. You were right on the money.
Yeah. Well, most.
But it don't taste like 20%. I promise you. But you wouldn't drink that thinking it was 20%.
No.
So
because that will sneak up fast.
Yeah. One full glass, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Because if I do two, I'm not going to be good. So.
Well, speaking of good, that's a great segue. If my microphone will stay in place, what are you doing now? What's John up to these days?
Yeah, so 20 years training fifth group. COVID hits, can't do that anymore. And let me tell you, man, transitioning out is hard enough as it is, but then to do that for another 20 years as a contractor and then have to try to find a new career is brutal.
I imagine.
So, I ran that program, and I ran a lot of the military program for the Army for 20 years. And it took me almost, that was June. It took me almost 15 months to get back to suitable income. Living income, not even good income.
Yeah.
I applied for job after job after job for management, and I was either too qualified or because I didn't have any civilian experience, people didn't want to hire,
Yeah.
And
I know that.
And it got to the point to where I was trying to figure out, number one, if I could do something else, if there was something else I could do. Because I've always lived my life like, just do what you love and make money at it, and then you'll have a good life, right? So that's how I did fighting. So when I was young, my grandmother told me I should give up fighting because you'll never pay your bills. And then I did a lot more than pay my bills with it, and then paid my way through college, and then, started training fifth group. So I started asking myself, what would I love to do? Where would I go? Like those kind of questions. And it was getting to a point to where I had a job offer for $18 an hour to be a prison guard, or $12 an hour with the potential of moving up to 15 to do this other thing. And I was at the end of my savings. I was at the end of the COVID gig worker benefits, because I've always been a gig worker. I've always been a 1099. So all that stuff was coming to an end. And it was so funny. My buddy, he and I were having coffee, and he goes, "Hey, one of my friends is looking for a coach. You should check it out." I was like, "Coach, there's nobody doing combatives in the military. Like, everybody's still locked down. There's nothing like that." He goes, "I don't know. He just said he's looking at hiring coaches." I was like, "Okay, I'll call him." So I called him, and it was not for combatives. He's a sales coach with the oldest sales training company in the country, Southwestern. We've been around since 1860s.
Oh, wow.
But I've been in sales my whole life. That's all I've ever done outside the Army. Even when I was training all the fifth group guys, I was the contracting sales rep. So I did all the contract stuff, all that good stuff, right? So I was like, yeah, I can sell. And so they put me in the interview process, and they hired me. So I start working at Southwestern Consulting in May of 21. Okay. But I didn't really get a paycheck until like July, because I had to do all their onboarding, certification, commission only position. So okay. Right. So I do that, and then February of last year, I start like, not that any of my clients were bad, because they were all really great, super professional, multi six-figure income people, etc. I just missed the military side of things. Like, I missed that tribe, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, surely there's got to be a way for me to lean on, my military experience, 20 years at fifth group, and figure something out inside this role. And I had a meeting with a guy from Canada, not a military guy at all. And he goes, "Why don't you niche down and just sell to military people that are doing sales?" And I was like, I don't even think that exists. Like, so I did a LinkedIn search and found 415,000 veterans in sales. And that changed everything for me. So I started moving towards only coaching veteran clients, started working on my veteran network and who's doing sales inside veteran stuff. And then in May of last year, Fort Campbell, through one of my contacts there, called me and said, hey, would you consider doing a skill bridge? Right now, guys are getting out and they're getting offered $20, $25 an hour. Well, I just went through that.
Yep.
I was like, there's no way, man. That's just not right. And I was like, well, I'll take a look. And so I took a look at what it required to be a skill bridge. And I was like, oh, Jesus, no way. Like, there's so much red tape. And it's anywhere, depending on when you do it, a 6 to a 12 months, all the way up to a 2-year process to get certified. I was like, nope, I'm not doing that red tape stuff no more. I'm out. I said, but what I'll do is, because I don't like the idea of our guys getting $20 an hour, I'll find somebody to bring them in. And I did. I found this company called Sales Platoon, ran by Raleigh Wilkins, who is a Marine, did 3 tours, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. And so I brought him down to Fort Campbell. I got him read into Fort Campbell and really just started to work and partner with him. And then, as is with some of our tribe, he ended up taking his own life. And, you know, I called his silent partner and I said, hey, what are you guys going to do? Obviously, we're not going to run the next cohort. I got to let Fort Campbell know what's going on. And he's like, I don't know. We don't even have the dev certificate. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just follow up. I'll tell him this one's canceled and, you know, I'll follow up. So I called him at the end of August of last year. Said, hey, what are you doing? He said, we're going to sell. And I said, well, if you're going to sell, put my name in the hat. And they sold me the company. And so I took over as interim CEO in September or October of last year, and then took over as the legitimate CEO after we went through probate in January of this year. And so now I'm the CEO of Sales Platoon, which I've taken all the stuff that I've done at Southwestern and loaded that into Sales Platoon. So Sales Platoon is powered by Southwestern. Okay. We have a partnership with them, and we take transitioning military men and women. We teach them how to do sales. We get them into really high-end sales positions like United Rentals. We have a contract with a roofing company here. These guys are making 100, 200K a year. I have another company that's a medical device company for COPD that we're going to be partnering with in this next couple of weeks. And they're doing high-end medical sales. So we can do the full gamut. And then I got a couple of people that decide to do mortgage and, you know, real estate. So like they get to really learn all of it. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Much like you, the 4 viewers and 6 listeners here to the Knock&Talk show, they've heard, you know, I tore my rotator cuff in 2014, and after that, I was basically forced to medically retire out of law enforcement, and that transition from Canine Sergeant Faulkner to Patrick was a very difficult pill to swallow. In the law enforcement world, and as I remember when I transitioned out of the Air Force, out of sight, out of mind, right? They're continuing into their life as officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, whatever. You're not at roll call anymore. You're not on the roster anymore. You don't matter anymore. They've replaced you with a new cog in the wheel to make sure that the Borg keeps going, right? So it took about 4 months to find a job, and it was an entry-level alarm sales position for a mom and pop shop that struggled to make payroll. I was on a $450 a week draw, and they would set metrics for me to earn commissions, but every time I met that metric to get commission, they would change the structure because they couldn't afford it. So, you know, I moved on to something else, and then I was forced to move on to something else, and then something else. And, you know, so it's and then as COVID hit and started winding down, much like you, I was struggling to make a living. And it's, you know, I was interviewing for jailer positions, you know, $20 an hour because I had 15 years of experience. I had a degree. I had my advanced law enforcement certificate. I was a supervisor, so it was, you know, this little carrot hanging, you know. Anyway, so I know that struggle. And I remember when I got out of the Air Force, I was an F-16 avionics guy, and Delta, my job was attack control systems. Well, there's no combat radar on civilian aircraft. You know, they're not going to be sending pickles into pickle jars from 3 miles in the air. So, yeah, I know that struggle. So what you're doing, from my standpoint, thank you. Because when I exited out, there was 1 day of my out processing that they dedicated to resume writing. And they gave us templates that tried to word for word translate our Air Force jargon into civilian jargon. And it came out still gobbledygook. So thank you for stepping up and helping those boots transition. And if there's a way I can help, let me know.
Yeah, just spreading the word, you know. And let me tell you, man, it's so true. Right now, most people getting out of the military, unless they're in like a medical position or a lawyer or, you know, something like that, to basically getting offered this $20 to $25 an hour to be on top roofs, to be underneath floorboards, doing pesticide or patrolling highways.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to say 60 grand a year is a bad living, but that ain't the freaking living I want.
No.
You know? And, you know, sales, and, you know, we're not talking about the used cars guy that screwed you out of your LES when you're 18. You know, we're talking about professional sales, right?
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah.
B2B, you know, working business to business, doing product or service. And, you know, on the low end, they're making 65 on the low end. On the mid-tier range, you're making between 80 and 100. So, and then if you get really good and decide to go commission only, a lot of those guys are making 2, 3, 4, 500,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of opportunity out there if you apply the discipline from the military and forget about the guy who stole your LES. So,
or the stripper you married.
Or the stripper you married that took the rest. You know, should have known better.
Oh, goodness. I think that happens in every branch, right?
Yeah.
Bless them.
And don't believe them. They're not recovered strippers. That never works out.
No. No, there's no reform.
Really not.
Oh, goodness.
Even if you meet them after they stop stripping, just run away.
Yeah,
just
run
away.
fast. Yeah. How can people find you, John?
Really, my footprint's pretty easy to find. If you just type in my name, any one of like 30 different ways to contact me. MySalesPlatoon.com. LinkedIn is just John Renken. And then you can also find me on Facebook, John Renken. So there's a lot of different ways.
All right. Before we sign off, is there any last word, comment, suggestion, advice, guidance that you want to share with everybody? All six of us.
So if you're still active, you're still in the military, the one thing that they should have taught us from the beginning, they don't ever teach us, which is that you need to approach your military career like we did every mission, which is you start with the end of your time in mind on day one, right? So when we backwards plan for a mission, we start with the end state and the commander's intent, and then we back all the way up to the start. but they never taught us to do that with our actual careers, right?
No.
So guys and girls are getting to 3 years if they're on a 4-year, or 5 years, or 15 years, and they have no idea what they're going to do with the rest of their life. We can retire out of the military at 38 and still have a shit ton of life left that we haven't even looked at. So what I've been trying to tell people and trying to get ahead of it, now that I'm in this SkillBridge community, is the day you take your oath, start planning for your exit. Right?
Yeah.
So backwards plan. It doesn't matter if that's a 20-year, a 10-year, a 5-year, or a 2-year commitment. The day you start, plan for what your exit is. Right? And then the other thing is that if you look at what an average an average time commitment to the military is, 4 years. Your wife will love this comment. So
Maybe.
On average, that means that the federal government is taking between $35,000 and $45,000 from you in taxes.
Mm.
They're going to give you back 2 or 3 if you got a couple of chitlins. Okay. If you would start a side hustle, you could reclaim all that $40,000 to help with your exit strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's driving Uber or doing real estate or doing mortgages. Hell, I'm teaching a guy right now, he's got a tax office, on how to get guys in units to become tax certified and then do all the taxes for their unit.
Smart.
Right?
Yeah.
And he gets a cut of that because he's
enrolled.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you start, there's just so many things out there that we were never taught when we were in. Here's another one. My son has listened to me, thank God, because he's in the Air Force now as a cybersecurity guy. If you just do $250 a month for your entire military career, when you retire at 38, you'll have around $3.5 million in the account, which means you could literally tell everybody to go F themselves and do what you want, because at 3.5, you could live off the interest.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But nobody told me that when I was a kid. Did anybody tell you that?
My father, but I didn't listen to him.
Yeah, right? So really, and I think all of that is systemic to the problem. We don't think with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we started thinking about these things, we would start a side hustle. Your wife wouldn't have to go work at Hooters, right? Because you would be able to reclaim more than what she's going to make there, right? You laugh, but you know it's true, man.
Yes. Yes.
So, you're going to get all that money back. Then you're going to invest $250, which is also a tax write-off if you're a 1099. And then you can do all these things that actually set your life up to be a life that you want to live, so that they don't have to go through the struggle of you and I, where we had to recreate our lives and figure out what we were going to do next. If you start with that end in mind.
Yeah.
And so that's my advice to anybody. And I don't care if you're 40 or 20 or 60. Okay, you got 20 years left on average if you're 60. So what do you want life to look like at Eddie when you're about to die?
Yeah.
Start with that end in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then backwards plan it.
Reverse engineer. Yep. That's a great piece of advice. For the new boots just getting started. If you're planning to be a one-termer, my advice to you is start saving your leave. Right, you want to have a large terminal leave bucket. That was the best advice my supervisor gave me, and I got out with 60 days of terminal leave, so that I had 2 months that I didn't have to report to duty, that I was getting paid, and I got a job about 3 weeks into that. So for a time, I had 2 paychecks.
Yep.
So terminal leave, reverse engineer, I love it. I love it. Well, folks, thanks for sticking with us, hanging out, listening to our stories. This was the 38th episode of John Renken. And I really think, John, we should get together again and do nothing but fight stories. Because I feel like there's probably hours of content.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I bet there is. Folks, thanks again. Stay safe. Keep your head on a swivel, and we'll catch you next time.
The Knock&Talk Show is a certified veteran-hosted podcast. Show your support, tune in, share, and subscribe.